what happened last week or this week in Johannesburg with the BRICS conference is a sign that I think gold and commodities will become more important. So it's actually the BRICS system is a reaction on our fiat paper money system centered around US treasuries. So when they build a new system centered around gold and commodities, then things get very interesting, especially for commodity investors like ourselves. I think the next few years or even few decades, we'll see a strong bull market in commodities and in precious metals.
Last week's BRICS summit, bringing together the leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, was touted as a pivotal event that could change the contours of international relations. Willem Middelkoop, founder of Commodity Discovery Fund, sees the BRICS system as a response to the existing fiat paper money system tied to US treasuries. He envisions creating a new financial system centered around commodities, particularly precious metals, which could prove especially intriguing for investors focused on commodities. One key outcome of the 15th BRICS summit, hosted by South Africa, is inviting 6 more countries to join the group from January 2024. They are Argentina, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates. All 6 had applied for membership. The enlargement will grow the association's membership to 11 and increase its envisaged role as a geopolitical alternative to global institutions dominated by the West. Willem speculates that these invitations hold weight and signify a forthcoming commitment from these nations. If these countries join, they could collectively wield significant influence, comparable to a new version of OPEC, given their substantial control over a significant portion of global oil production. For 80 years, the United States dollar has dominated all other currencies. But a grouping of developing countries tired of the West's looming presence over global governance and finance is determined to take it down a peg. The process of de-dollarization is irreversible and gaining pace, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday in a virtual address to the BRICS summit. While Willem acknowledges the possibility of shifts in the global order, he cautions against expecting a sudden collapse of the dollar system within a short time frame. He points out that these transitions take time, although the dollar's value has decreased significantly compared to other currencies like the Chinese renminbi. He asserts that the BRICS countries, led by China, are growing stronger, particularly as they seek unity to challenge what they perceive as Western financial system disparities. We will now bring you clips from Willem Middelkoop's interviews with Wall Street Silver. But before we do, if you want more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more updates. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
I think it's quite significant that we had this BRICS conference, and we learned that they invited 6 countries to join the BRICS alliance. And I don't think these countries are named without their approval. So when they say the Saudis are invited, it means that the Saudis will really join them next year. And of course, we've had these rumors in the last few months that the Saudis might be willing to join the BRICS alliance. And that's highly significant because the BRICS alliance could turn up to be like a new OPEC. You know, they control almost half of world's oil production. We'll have, of some of us might remember the footage, I think it was from 2019 during the G20 conference, when MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, made this high five with Putin.
Yeah, I remember that.
With Trump in the back. And we were all surprised. So why were they joking that way? And now we know that President Xi and President Putin have met up over 40 times face to face to discuss all these changes. And both Russia and China, both leaders, have made several statements that they're working on a whole new plan. And I think President Xi has a longer-term vision. And he's shown his cards now, and this I think when we look back 5 or 10 years from now, we'll say this is all very this was all very significant. There's a war ongoing against Russia.
Yeah,
that's in the Ukraine, and the US made it quite clear that they're willing to take on China. Several generals or ex-generals have said we need to prepare for war. And remember, President Xi, he told his generals prepare for war. So the US won't go down without a fight, but don't expect a collapse of the dollar system within 12 months. This all takes time. And the dollar, world trade is still done in dollars for 90%. But if you look at world trade in renminbi, it's now almost 5%. And that was just 1% a few years ago. So the BRICS countries, China as its leader, are getting stronger. And when they really are able to unite, I think each country of the BRICS has its own priorities, has its own agenda. But I think they are united in their criticism on the Western financial system. They're fed up with Western double standards. They're fed up with Western hypocrisy. They understand that the West have been exploiting the rest of the world for maybe, and now they understand it's a numbers game. The BRICS GDP is larger than G7 GDP, and if you look at people living in the BRICS countries, that's a few billion people, and the Western Alliance is just 1.5 billion people. And don't forget, you have these 140 countries who didn't join us in applying sanctions to Russia. So 140 countries, all countries in the Middle America, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and most countries in Asia, they don't have sanctions on Russia. And they're fed up with the double standards.
Following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in March of 2023 and Signature Bank shortly after that, many expected the regional banking sector crisis would soon end. Willem acknowledges that central banks have quickly resolved the banking crisis of the past through printing money. However, he points out that there's one crisis that can't be fixed by money printing, and that's inflation. Inflation can't be controlled by simply printing more money, which raises concerns about the potential for a crisis that central banks might not be able to manage effectively. Looking back to the early 2000s, Willem has long foreseen a decline in the paper dollar system. He invested in gold, silver, and other hard assets, and, over time, expanded his investment strategy to include smaller companies with substantial resources in precious and industrial metals. His approach involves pooling funds from high-net-worth individuals and investing in significant but undeveloped mining projects globally. Let's get back to the interview.
I think the banking crisis was resolved pretty quickly. So central banks have been able to solve each and every crisis by just actually printing money. But there's one crisis we can't by printing money, and that's the inflation. We can't fix inflation, higher interest rates by printing money. So I think in the next few years, we might enter periods of crisis where the central banks are not able to stop it. And that's worrying. And that's where things get real serious. I think there's a lot of stress building in the system. There's a lot of stress building, especially in the real estate market, especially the commercial real estate market. And I think the central bankers are just waiting to see what will break next, and then they'll need to make their next move, and the next move might be a pause in raising interest rates, and then you can expect they need to lower interest rates, or you can expect they need to start QE again. And the banking crisis of what was it, February this year, was solved by printing money as well, but it's printing money in a hidden way. It's not that obvious, but if you look at the balance sheet, you can find it there at the Federal Reserve. I always had this vision since the early 2000s that we would see a decline of our paper dollar system one day. And I was very interested to hedge my own net worth. I made some money in real estate in the 1990s by investing in gold and silver and other hard assets. And after I bought some physical precious metals early in the 2000s and started to research this more and worked on my first book, which came out in 2007, I decided it would be very interesting to start investing in smaller companies who have large resources and reserves in gold, silver, but also copper, nickel, zinc, the battery metals, and uranium. So what we do with our fund, we pool money from high net worth individuals. We have some 150 million Canadian under management, and we invest that in the top 100 of most significant but still undeveloped mining projects worldwide. So we own a lot of stuff in the ground. We take positions in these listed companies, and it has been a tough time because the valuations in the mining space have been so low in the last few years. But now the market seems to have bottomed. We had this double bottom in 2020. So we see very strong inflow into our fund. And I think the next few years or even few decades, we'll see a strong bull market in commodities and in precious metals.
In the coming years, the BRICS countries' efforts to establish an alternative financial system centered around commodities could shift the global economic landscape. Though home to about 40% of the world's population and a quarter of global gross domestic product, internal divisions have long hobbled BRICS' ambitions of becoming a significant player on the world stage. What are your thoughts on the potential impact of the BRICS countries' efforts on the global financial system? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this video informative, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and enable notifications to stay informed about our latest videos on silver, gold, and copper. Thank you for watching, and we appreciate your support.